Hi Gemini, welcome to your May 2018 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So happy solar return. Some of you in May will be having your birthdays, but I think all of you will start to feel more energetic as the month progresses, especially from the 20th onwards when the sun goes into your sign. The big news here is A, there's a lot going on, but B, you have a lot going on in the 12th house. The 12th house, in case you're not sure what that all entails, is the house that Pisces and its ruler Neptune rule in the overall chart, the universal chart. And so this is the house that we would associate with Piscean kind of things, past lives, so karma. It's the house of self-undoing, the ways that you are self-destructive, the ways that you are not at your best, these patterns, and they could be karmic patterns. They may go back for lifetimes where you have a certain tendency to do certain things. The 12th house is mental health versus the physical health of the 6th house, ruled by the opposite sign of Virgo. There's all kinds of things. And I would say when we're talking about mental health, that we're talking about consciousness, okay? And this is one of the pieces that I think is missing in the whole mental health, discussion, conversation, is the fact that we are spirit souls. We're not just these dumb lumps of flesh, and when we are feeling certain challenging emotions, that it's due to just something in the body itself, that there's not a disturbance in the energetic field, and that it's not necessarily originating in the spiritual dimension. I believe that everything is the opposite of what a lot of people, they say, the physical creates the psychological. I believe that that everything begins with thought, and thought is what creates, okay? And so anyway, all of these things are happening in that house, some of these transits. For a sign like Gemini, this can be a little bit, I don't know if you'd call it unnerving, or just something that is not necessarily your cup of tea that you perhaps like to explore on a regular basis. If I were doing this reading for a Scorpio person, they'd be like, oh, goody, I get to do shadow work. But for Gemini, that likes to keep things airy-fairy, very much in the mind, very much detached. It can be, since this is a water house being ruled by Pisces, an emotional time, but kind of a peculiar, I can never say the word peculiar, kind of an odd type of emotion coming up, dredged up, where you don't know what is triggering it, perhaps. And it's very good to not distract yourself when you have these, what I call psychic hits. It's really good to just sit with it and say, wow, where is this coming from? What feels familiar to me, so that you can make those connections. It's like doing self-inquiry. And so let's look at what planets are going to be in that 12th house and how it all shakes out for you. The sun is, starting May in that 12th house. So we know the sun is there. We also know that, let me see, there's another planet that I thought was in that house. And, let me just go in order here. No, that's fine. The month begins with Mercury going out of its shadow around May 4th. And if you recall, Mercury went into Aries, or went retrograde in Aries. This was back right after the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, obviously. And that was around the 22nd that Mercury went retrograde. Went direct in the middle of April, and when a planet goes direct, it still takes time for it to leave its shadow, and this is it gaining degrees until it goes back into the same degree it was when it retrograded. And this indicates when it's back to full strength. So this is what Mercury being back to full strength around May 4th. And this is particularly important for Geminis because you're ruled by Mercury. In the 11th house, you're grappling with issues surrounding what it is that you really, really want from life and the long-term goals that you have in order to get there. So the 10th house is your career, but the 11th house is kind of like your dream life. And your career may definitely be a big part of that, but there are other things besides your career that make up, who you are, what you're about. On the 13th, Mercury does enter into Taurus, so that's in that 12th house. And so that can be a time when you start to find that your communication skills are kind of, I don't know if you'd call them totally destroyed for a bit, or definitely on a different track, because Mercury is also, the way that you think, the way that you talk, and obviously when you're thinking and talking, well, at least when you're talking to other people. Chances are you're not just talking to yourself. So communication involves having clarity with your words, okay, obviously. And this is going to be a time when that's not necessarily first and foremost on the agenda. You may find that communicating is not as easy as it normally is for you. And especially when it goes into your first house, which will happen on the 29th of the month, okay? So until then, you may have a bit of a communication breakdown with others. You might even be like quite in your head where you are thinking a lot. There's a lot of internalized things going on for you in more ways than one. On the 15th of the month, I think this is a very significant day for all of us. But for you, this is a very spiritually significant day because Uranus goes into Taurus. And this is that 12th house. And on the very same day, there's a new moon in Taurus at 24 degrees of Taurus. So these are two transits in that 12th house. One is a new beginning, and one is Uranus in that house. Now, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. It's very erratic, so unpredictable, and it's also psychic, okay? Aquarius is considered one of the most intuitive signs, and it's like these flashes of insight, okay? For you, with Uranus in the 12th house, this could involve the raising of the Kundalini according to your own karmic blueprint. And there's a great book, if you're interested in a book that combines astrology with Kundalini Awakening, there's a book that I've been recommending, so resoundingly, and yet I've only read the introduction. And that's just typical for me, but I can tell that it's an important work because it's about how this woman who's an astrologer, her name is Barbara Hand Clow, and I'm sure that she's much more than an astrologer. She seems to embody different disciplines. And she had noticed in her work with clients that they were having this Kundalini awakening around the age of 42. And she was able to narrow down the fact that they were experiencing an opposition between their natal Uranus and the transiting Uranus, okay? And I thought back to when I was 42, and I had a similar awakening, although was it a Kundalini awakening? To me, a Kundalini awakening, which, by the way, just to review for those people who don't know what the Kundalini is, there's supposed to be an energy that gathers at the base of our spine. And the sacral chakra, or I don't know what that corresponds to. I think it's the sacral chakra, but one of the lower chakras, either the first or the second. Root chakra, perhaps, whatever. It's neither here nor there. It's just that the energy is coiled like a snake. And apparently the American Medical Association's logo with that snake, and then there's that it's like a tube kind of a thing that the snake is kind of wound away. It's round. That's kind of like occult symbolism, because, and I mean, I didn't make that up. I think I might have noticed it myself, but I read about it, that it is supposed to indicate the Kundalini. And really, the point is that we all have this potential for the spiritual knowledge that is hidden to the masses, but is awakened within us when the time is right. Well, you could even say when the time is ripe for it to occur. And we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Obviously, all of this is my opinion. I'm stating it as fact, but it's my opinion. And so this can be a time for some people who are Geminis, where you have these kind of experiences that come out of nowhere. Now, whether these correspond to the astrological connection that I was referring to with Uranus opposing Uranus, that would depend. You would have to have your natal Uranus in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so this would be somebody who is in their 40s, early 40s. So how old would they be? I mean, what year would they be born? Probably, I'm thinking like mid-70s or early to mid-70s, something along those lines. Uranus is in one sign for approximately 7 or 8 years or so. So this could be something that occurs for some of you in the next almost decade, where you have the potential for these experiences. So just a little word to the wise. And again, as I said about my experience, it was more of an awakening in terms of learning more, being exposed to more. You have people at the extreme end like Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie, who had experiences where they actually had amnesia. I don't know about Eckhart Tolle, but I do know that Byron Katie did not know who she was, and she had gone in for rehab, and she had her samadhi experience, or if you want to call it the Kundalini raising experience, that put her in this exalted state. Okay, so some of you may have that occur in whatever way it happens. Some people deliberately try to raise the Kundalini, and supposedly that can be dangerous. So I don't know. I mean, I said supposedly. I'm sure that there are cases where people are doing it consciously, through pranayama or breath work or other ways, and they do it very deliberately and carefully. So I'm not going to tell people not to do whatever they want to do. But this is significant because you have Mercury going into Taurus on that date, on the 15th. I'm sorry, Uranus going into Taurus on the 15th, and then you have on the same day the new moon in that 12th house. So that could be saying that this is a new beginning for you spiritually, Gemini. This is a new day. The very next day, Mars goes into Aquarius in the 9th house of the higher mind. Okay, this is the God house. Now, this means that for the first half of the month, you have Mars in the 8th house, which in part can deal with probate issues, the issues related to other people's money, okay? And then the action goes into that ninth house, which can indicate legal cases, okay? So they may be interconnected. It's the ninth house is also, like I said, the God house. So for some people, you may have been fighting with family members over money, and then you have a change of heart. You realize that it's all an illusion. Or it could be that the legal case is going on. There's always a possibility that it has nothing to do with God. It has to do with you fighting for this money. And with Mars in the ninth house, it could even be that foreign travel is on the menu for you, and perhaps you're even doing it. You're even touring. Europe popped into my head because I was thinking of somebody roaming around, maybe like really going from country to country and exploring, and maybe not even bothering with some kind of a tour guide, where you just want to do your own thing, that you have this certain independence. When Mars is in Aquarius, there's a real desire to understand other people, okay? And to really explore it just on that physical level. You know, sometimes you can get things in books, and of course, Aquarius is a fellow air sign. So Geminis and Aquarians and Librans have a tendency to see things from the point of view of their academic studies or their concepts of whatever the subject matter is. But it's only when you get, I was going to say down and dirty, when you get into that situation that you can see it at ground level, okay? Because what is in books can be sanitized. It can be, shaded with the opinion of the author. But if you do it yourself, you will start to see what's really going on. And it can give you the kind of education that a book can never give you, because it's the education of experience. On the 19th, Venus goes into Cancer, the second house of earned income. This is awesome for Gemini because this is money time. Venus rules the second house. So the second house of earned income is also luxury items, so that could somehow be on the menu for you. But Venus entering any house can be a time of potential financial gain. In this particular case, you could be seeing that your money is increasing, but also there's a sense of like, a feeling of well-being, because with Venus in Cancer, we're talking about needing to feel emotionally secure. So because you have this as your second house, so it's flavored with Cancer, the energy of Cancer. Gemini people, maybe that's one of the reasons why I consider Gemini people to be cheapskates. And I know that I'm going to get flack for that. That's okay. I can handle it. I'm a big girl. Okay. Do you agree with me, Gemini? Do you think you're a cheapskate? I'm a Sagittarian, so I'm the opposite sign to you. So I tell it like it is. What I mean by that, by the way, is that you're not like a big spender, I think. That's my feeling, okay? If you feel that I'm right about this, it might be because your second house is Cancer, and Cancers tend to be fiscally conservative. Now, here's the interesting thing. My theory might not hold water because Sagittarians and fire signs in general are supposed to be generous, and I think I'm kind of a cheapskate myself, okay? I have a lot of earth in me, including a Virgo moon, Taurus rising. There are times when I spend money, but I'm basically kind of like a little bit of a cheapskate. Okay, I like a good sale, you know the drill. I think that, and what I'm trying to say is that Sagittarius' second house is Capricorn. So that's another sign that I associate with being fiscally conservative. So maybe Sagittarians are cheapskates too. Okay. So I'm dissing myself. So don't, get too heated up about what I just said. I'm just curious if this is a thing, because I'm thinking of another Sagittarius that I know that I think is a cheapskate. Actually, a couple. So I think I might be onto something. Okay. So where was I going with that, calling you a cheapskate? Well, I was saying that you might feel emotionally secure when Venus goes into that second house, because it makes you feel like your monetary needs are being taken care of. I already told you that the sun is going into your sign on the 20th, and so you're going to feel a lot more like yourself, because the sun is in alignment with who you are, with who you really are, and that's what the sun is all about, is identity. So that could be a time where you feel a sense of coming home to yourself. And then, as I stated earlier, on the 29th, Mercury goes into your first house as well, in your sign. So not only do you have the sun there, but Mercury, which is your ruler, is in your sign, and you're going to be aligned with a lot of good communication skills, which you naturally possess. You may have lost them for a few weeks with Mercury being in the 12th house. You may be off on some wild tangents, but then you gain back that sense of who you are. And on the very same day, there's going to be a full moon in Sagittarius, which is that opposite house of the first house, the 7th house of partnership. So for some Geminis who have been having a shaky relationship, this could be a very revealing full moon where you discover the truth about a situation, maybe the truth about your partner, because the full moon will be in their house, and you're watching it from the vantage point of having the sun in your sign. So it's like you have that sense of self, and you're seeing the other person for who they really are. So if there's any kind of shady business with this partner, it may come out then. And that gives you that sense of validation that you knew something was off. And that can lead to you maybe ending a long-term relationship. But it's not going to be, I don't think it's a sad thing, because I think that there's this sense of you feeling like it's a validation to you. Remember that all of these transits can have different effects depending on what your particular situation is. And it's just like the big reveal, where you understand that this has been happening, and it confirms your suspicions. And again, as I stated in other recent readings, you have had Saturn in Sagittarius for several years. Now it's in your 8th house, okay? But it was in your committed partnership sector for a few years until late last December. And there are some people who experienced marital difficulties, the ending of marriages, and some people may have hung on, and now it's time to let it go. For other people whose marriages are good, this could be a time of really seeing your partner in the light, understanding them better, because it's all about revelations and information coming forward. So that can actually strengthen your relationship. Okay, well, that's what I have for you, Gemini. Again, happy birthday. And if you'd like maybe a natal chart interpretation for your birthday as a birthday present to yourself, please check out my website, rainandmoonastrology.com. The link is below. And I combine chart analysis with looking at some of the trends that are coming up in the next 12 months for you. That can be kind of fun to look at, because sometimes they're current trends too. Things that you've already been experiencing that you can validate right now and say, yeah, that is true for me, but also future trends, things that are, to show what the next the solar cycle may bring for you. So check out the link below. Otherwise, take care. Bye.